Hello, today we are going to be presenting on Conflict Theory Simplified. This presentation will be by Nicola Murphy, Jeanette Ochoa, Amber Smith, and Luisa Milazzo. We'd like to start by talking about the practice principles and definitions of conflict theory. So according to Langer and Leitz, conflict is inevitable. It is due to an unequal distribution of power and relationships. There is an ongoing struggle for scarce resources, and whoever has the most power controls the distribution of those scarce resources. So it's really important that we work to understand what is driving the conflict to achieve positive outcomes. Secondly, we need to recognize that someone always has more power. That could be based on race, social class, wealth, gender, etc. Thirdly, there's typically more needs than resources. And so that prioritization of the scarce resources creates the conflict. And then lastly, there's a structural imbalance due to an unequal distribution of power in relationships. And given that human conflict is abundant in our world today, Bartos and Ware 2008 posit that there are renewed efforts to understand it and resolve its harmful effects.
Conflict theory can be used at all levels of practice. Social workers are able to advocate and lobby for inequalities in society, such as distribution of services or pay. One example can be advocating for lower income and wealthy communities to have the same services provided by the city. Another example can be to advocate for equal distribution of economical support for poor communities as well as the rich ones. Conflict theory advocates for equality for all. Social workers can advocate for affordable education for all students that want to pursue a higher education. Conflict theory helps identify the African American struggle for equality in the civil rights movement. The most common type of internal conflict develops out of unjust inequality. Milazzo applies the conflict theory when dealing with issues that arise within an organization. This can include a school, an agency, or a company. This can include conflicts between the students that need to be addressed with parents, teachers, staff, and students. Milazzo focuses on the relationship between employers and employees as one conflict. One example is that employers want to pay as little as possible and employees want to earn as much as possible. Micro applies conflict theory to address inequalities that exist in a relationship. This may include issues between couples or issues between the parents and a teenager.
There are many strengths and benefits of conflict theory. According to Deborah Marshall, conflict theory has helped provide explanations for inequity and strives to make things more equitable for marginalized groups. According to Langer and Leitz, conflict theory can be used across all practice settings and populations. In life, conflict is inevitable, so the use of conflict theory can assist in normalizing conflict. The presence of conflict can often lead to positive changes, and analyzing conflicts can lead to achieving greater equality, equity, and structural balance in society. In a study done by Petrosilli, Piquero, and Smith, racial profiling was examined with police traffic stop data. From a conflict theory perspective, researchers expected to find that police officers would profile minority and poor neighborhoods to make a larger percentage of traffic stops, which actually was not the case. Their findings suggested that socioeconomic and demographic factors were not significant with a stop, but rather a neighborhood with a higher crime rate was the factor. Conflict theory was used to analyze an assumed inequity here, and the findings resulted in an unexpected positive result. There's another study here that you can review if you would like, that I won't cover for the sake of time.
Conflict theory, limitations and barriers. According to Gallo, too often when a conflict is analyzed or when decisions about an actual or potential conflict are taken, The kind of reasoning that is followed is simplistic, linear, to say the least. Gallo also notes the limitations of conflict theory, that the complexity of a conflict can be disregarded. Decisions may worsen conflict without a holistic approach, that conflict is a complex system, and that conflict resolution is focused on closure to isolate the problem. Study conducted by Muleman, Davidov, and Billiet on European attitudes towards outgroups and immigration, researchers suggested that negative attitudes towards outgroups essentially stem from the view that certain prerogatives of their own group are threatened by other groups. Negative outgroup sentiments can thus be seen as a defensive reaction to perceived intergroup competition for scarce goods. Findings varied across countries, though, and consequently, it is very hard to formulate clear-cut expectations with respect to the evolution of attitudes towards immigration in Europe. This study assumed that negative viewpoints towards immigrants stemmed from the idea of competition of resources, such as income, housing, and better job opportunities. Out of the 17 countries, only 3 identified employment opportunities as reasoning for negative views towards immigrants. This study discounted the importance of how people relate to others in their society in terms of race, ethnicity, and how they organize their social environment. The study also illustrates how conflict theory is limited in its ability to identify social stability that exists within societies. Thank you.